Good afternoon. We're going to give everybody just a minute or two to log in, and then we will get started. Thank you for joining us today. Give us just a couple minutes. I know some people log in right at noon, so we want to make sure that we give them a chance to get going. So just 1 minute and we'll get started. Thank you. Okay, we want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we're going to go ahead and get started and let folks just log in as they come. Good afternoon. My name is Rita Blevins, Director of Professional Development for the Houston Association of Realtors. Welcome to today's webinar, Tapping into the LGBTQ plus community and market. This afternoon, you will hear from a panel of industry leaders who will provide insight into how to grow your business within this community, as well as how to recognize blind spots and to remove those blind spots that you may have as it relates to serving the LGBTQ plus buyers and sellers. HAR is committed to embracing diversity and inclusion. And so this webinar is just one of several programs that we'll be offering throughout the year. I'll be back later this afternoon to share with you information regarding our next program and how you can get registered to attend. Today's session will be facilitated by Tracy Brown, HAR's Diversity and Inclusion Consultant. She is our expert extraordinaire and has asked me not to go on and on by reading her bio. So I will not do that today, but she is amazing. I just want you guys to know that. So before I pass the virtual microphone on to Tracy, I'd like to remind you to put your questions into the chat throughout the afternoon. You can choose for the questions to go to everyone, both panelists and attendees, or just the panelists. We will field questions as time permits. And since I know you're all going to be asking, we are recording this session. It's nothing like being present and live in the session, but it will be available later, and we'll be resending everyone who registered for today's program the link. It's also available on HAR TV's YouTube channel, har.com/HARTV. So, okay, Tracy, time for you to take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. I'm so excited that HAR is once again stepping up to the plate to provide information and answer questions that members may have about specific identity groups and communities. My name is Tracy Brown, and I get to work with clients all over the United States, and there is no client that is doing more than HAR to align the commitment to inclusion to what the business is about. So today, what you can expect during this panel is some answers to, well, what is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and allies or related communities? What is that about? What's that marketplace about? Why should I care as a professional in the real estate industry? And we're going to focus on relationships. We're going to focus on respect. We're going to focus on reputation, and all of that in service to focusing on how do you get the business results you want while you tap into the LGBTQ plus market. So joining me on this journey, there's some fabulous panelists, and I'm going to ask them to each give you a 90-second to 2-minute introduction to who they are, what's their connection to the real estate industry and or HAR. So let's start with Cindy. And Cindy is going to unmute so that you can get a feel for who she is if you have not already met her before.
Thank you. I am a proud mother of 3 grown children who are married, and I have a granddaughter. My partner Lisa and I live out in Hempstead, Texas. I'm a licensed broker, and I own my own company with about 25 agents, Integrity Texas Properties. I'm also the first openly gay chairman of Houston Association of Realtors in 2017. Yay, that was exciting. I serve also on the board of directors for NAR and regional vice president for TAR. Very involved in the community, my church, and and just love selling real estate and working my referral network base. And a lot of that comes from our family here. And I just want to thank you guys for that.
Beautiful. Thanks, Cindy. Let's go in alphabetical order by first name. Cody.
Unmute.
There it goes. Okay, my name is Cody Krzafi, and I am with NRL Mortgage. I have been in the mortgage industry for over 18 years, financing longer than that. My partner and I have 2 kids that are 12 and 13 now, and I've just been in the financing since right out of high school. So it's just something that I know and do. And obviously I'm very involved within the community and all around, and native Houstonian. So pretty much know a lot of people, as we all do, and small industry and small world to begin with, but definitely love what I do and helping get everybody in a home.
Beautiful, fantastic. And Ricky, why don't you unmute and let people know a little bit about who you are?
Hi, everyone. First off, happy Pride. It's the last day of Pride Month. So just want to wish you guys and hope you guys had an amazing Pride Month and continue for the rest of the year. My name is Ricardo Gonzalez. Most call me Ricky or Wikipedia. I'm a realtor, also a president for the for Realty World Memorial and a team lead for the RG Group. I currently have the honor of sitting as the chairman for the Young Professionals Network at HAR, and also sit on the board of directors for TAR, Texas Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors. And I'm just super excited to be here and looking forward to today.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. So attendees, I mean, like, put in the chat, is this a great panel or what? I am really looking forward to hearing what they have to share, some of their own examples as we explore this topic. But let's start with this whole idea of what is the LGBTQ marketplace? When we say that, we're talking about an identity group, but it's not really always easy to recognize or to know who of your buyers or sellers or people who are renting or leasing commercial space. You don't always know. But there are some statistics that are available, especially on a nationwide level. In fact, NAR just in the month of June released the latest update on some of the data and statistics specifically about LGBTQ home buyers and home sellers. So we'll talk a little bit also about commercial and business owners and entrepreneurs and when they are your clients. But let's focus first just a little bit on what we know about the LGBTQ home buyers and sellers. So if we look at, actually, let me go to Ricky, because I know that Ricky has some information that he wants to share, and then I'll also share some links with you and we can add to that.
Absolutely. So just in general, so I forgot to mention earlier, I do service a very diverse market, and I grew up in a very small town, small little country town. I didn't know what LGBTQ meant was. I didn't even know I was Hispanic till second grade. So growing up, it's very important for me to be able to advocate and educate not just consumers, but real estate professionals alike, And, when you talk about stats, compared, obviously this is a real estate market, and nationally, a couple of years ago, home ownership rate in the general public was 64% compared to our 49% in the LGBTQ community. So it's a little bit less. So we definitely have some growth there. But despite being less, what we found out as the LGBT respondents for the surveys, they had really large positive attitudes towards homeownership. 3/4 of the LGBTQ renters agreed that owning a home was a great financial decision. And 72% of those renters said that they want to own a home. So there's definitely a lot of growth and a lot of potential. But why is homeownership still lower than the national average for the general public? And primary reasons for low homeownership rate among the LGBTQ community maybe have a tendency because we tend to relocate a little bit more frequently. We found that several factors, including increased mobility, lower marriage, and tendency to live in high cost urban areas. And of course, fear of discrimination may be contributing to lower home ownership rates. So just to kind of put that stat out there, just to kind of give everyone perspective of how we compare to the national and general public,
Beautiful. Cindy, Cody, do you want to add anything? And then I'll add some of the NAR statistics.
I agree with Ricky, that being involved in the community, I'm so glad that NAR, and we're going to probably talk about this, has recognized, with our code of ethics, gender identity, the LGBTQ, being part of the fair housing. And that is so important in what we do today, because I can tell you there's a lot of communities, and individuals, realtors, that may not always be up on the code of ethics, and that we really need to get those words out.
I just agree with everything that both Cindy and Ricky have said. It's time for us to make sure that everybody understands that there's all walks of life, and we all just need to see what we can do to help one another out throughout anything.
Tracy, I had a client once who they were so scared to rent in a particular neighborhood. They had just gotten married, had a child, and they were turned away 16 times from different landlords. And even one of those landlords declined them in writing, basically stating that they did not fit the community or the neighborhood standards that the HOA was looking for. And so I met them in an open house, and they didn't know I was family in the LGBTQ community. And once they found that out, it was like I could literally see a huge relief fall from them. And it's important for us to be able to advocate, and for allies, to really show love and show empathy to everyone, because it is a marginalized group, and it's not fair. We need to do right.
What a great example. In some ways, for realtors, there is the important aspect of, obviously you want to provide the best service and the best information to every client, every potential customer, every potential buyer and seller. At the same time, and that makes sense, because in some ways the general marketplace and the LGBTQ marketplace, there are a lot of overlaps. And so we want to be aware of both where the marketplaces overlap or share commonality, as well as those places that are different. I'm only going to highlight 3 examples from the NAR data points, but we'll put in the chat afterwards a link. So if you are not familiar with this most recent report, you will be able to look it up and look at the data that's included in the 30 pages of the report. On the summary chart, one of the things that is really highlighted is that in the community or in the marketplace, people who have self-identified as LGBTQ who have purchased or sold a home over the last 5 years, that is a greater percentage of LGBTQ buyers and sellers, or buyers who are first-time buyers. And there's a greater percentage of unmarried couples who are making a purchase together. And the median square footage of homes purchased by people who self-identify as LGBTQ is a little over 1,700 square feet. So obviously, if you are marketing and you are selling homes and representing sellers who have homes who are in the 1,600 to 2,000 square feet, you may really want to look at this market. And remember, we're talking about median, not typical. So that means there are people who are buying 5,000 square feet homes, as well as people who are buying 1,000 square feet homes or properties. Median just is that similar to average, but not exactly. But you're in real estate, so I think you understand the use of median square footage. Also, when you think about home location, one of the things that I have heard some people say is, well, you know, I don't sell or market. I'm not looking for buyers in that particular neighborhood. So there are certain neighborhoods that have a reputation for a high percentage of residents who identify as LGBTQ. However, when you look at the data of actual buyers and sellers over the last 5 years nationwide, what it indicates is that the distinction or the percentage of the marketplace for suburban and subdivisions is really very close in terms of percentage of total buyers from the LGBTQ community and or the not LGBTQ community. And so be careful about the assumptions you make. If you notice on the chart, there is a tendency for there to be purchases, a larger percentage in urban areas or the central city. But again, that's the percentage of buyers in that category. So it's just something to think about and to look at, what are my assumptions about who's going to buy in the areas that I'm specializing in. And you want to just be careful about your assumptions. And the only other highlight that I'm going to share is the information about prices, or purchase prices and asking prices. And if you see or notice on this chart, there is a small difference or distinction. But if you simply look at the first two categories, with the darker blue on the left representing LGBTQ purchasers, and the tan color right next to it representing purchasers who are not LGBT or Q, the difference in price is not that significant. So again, any assumptions or stereotypes you might have in your head about the marketplace, you might want to think about them a little differently. And the same thing with asking prices for property being offered for sale. So this and many other data points that might be helpful to you as you target your business are available in the report, and we will put the link in the chat in just a moment. So that's data, that's statistics. But all of us know a realtor's most profitable activity is the relationships that you build. And especially when you're dealing with a market group, a market category, a stakeholder group that's really not limited to one geographic area, how can you gain visibility? Or I would think that people might be curious about how they build relationships that help them grow their business in this market. So Cindy, I'm going to ask you to lead off with either some examples from your experience or ideas that you have about building effective relationships with members of the LGBTQ community.
Absolutely. You know, Tracy, I've been in this business 25 years, and it's totally different today from when I got started. When I got started in real estate, it would be that people who were LGBTQ plus were kind of secretive. And, you know, and so a few agents would, or managers would come and say, you know, do y'all know anybody that works with, you know, these types of people? And that was so wrong, but that's how it was done 25 years ago. And a certain amount of people that were coming into the communities, you know, they wanted, you know, someone that was family, and that's what we call ourselves as a family. And so from today to, you know, from yesterday to today, it's just a totally different market, but being visible. You know, we have social media now, and, you know, blogging and being open. You know, when I first came out into my real estate, you know, I was a manager for a company that was very conservative, and, you know, I was raising my children and sending them to college, you know, and I didn't want to lose my job because I was, you know, I came out or I was gay, and it took me 12 years, you know, to do that. And, you know, but I built my business on referral business and always treating people the way I wanted to be treated. And yes, I was one of those managers that took and worked with family, you know, husbands or family of wives and their children, you know, to give them, you know, that security that I understood, you know, without being out. Once I came out, you know, of course, my Facebook blew up. My social media blew up, and my business activities, that's the market that I worked with and still continue to work with today. But it's a wholly different market that we work with today, where many people did not want to work with, you know, gay and lesbians. Today, everybody wants to be in that business, and they want to work because, you know, it used to be that, you know, and it's sad to say, but they used to think, in the statistics that you showed, Tracy showed that, you know, the price ranges. Well, you know, many agents and many managers and people in real estate thought that all gays were rich and they could buy all these big homes, you know, and it was just a stereotype, you know. But I would have to say the activities is be yourself on social media, be yourself every single day, you know, and you know, and not be afraid to talk about your life and your family. And, you know, who would have thought that I would have ran for the board of directors and won? And, you know, and then of course getting involved is so important.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think you say something really important about, you know, reputation and relationships help to build referrals. But that means the relationship has to be authentic. The relationship has to be a connection where you are being yourself and you're allowing or encouraging the buyer or seller to be themselves as well. Anything else related to relationships? Cody or Ricky, what comes to mind about the importance of the relationship that you build as a realtor or as someone in the mortgage industry?
Holistically, I think that it's 110% important, because you have to realize that everybody knows somebody. And no matter if you're going to market a particular group of people or if you're not, you want to be known as that person that treats each person with respect and equality. It doesn't matter if it's based on sexual orientation or if it's based on color or anything else. You want to be able to be that person that your friends are going to say, you know, hey, Cody helped me with the mortgage and I bought $1 million home. Well, their friend may not be able to afford that. Cody helped me with the mortgage in about $100,000 home. People need to realize that everybody knows somebody, and not everybody's situation is going to be the same, but not only financially, but personally as well. And that is what's going to get you noticed in your referral base all around. And like I said, as I've been doing this for over 18 years, and 95% of my business is past clients, referrals from past clients, and select realtors that I work with. And it's been a very good business. It doesn't matter if it's, the gay community or a specific community. It's, you've got to have that relationship and that personality, and people are going to know if you are sincere or not. Most will, because if you are just putting up a front for to get that deal, people are usually going to be able to tell that, or they will throughout the end of the transaction. And you always want to be known as the one that was truthful beginning to end, and all around supportive of no matter who you're working with and dealing with.
You make a really important point here, that the relationships we have already with people, in fact, we are now then connected to everyone they know as well. And so often we only think about the one-on-one relationship we have with an individual, but it is really critical for us to remember from a business perspective, especially, that the people we know may account for the referrals that that we get or don't get. And I want to add in here that this is especially true when we think about the relationships we have. I want to go just a moment over to the commercial side, because I can tell you some really surprising stories about the relationships that a couple of folks, actually more than a couple, about a half dozen people, have shared examples with me of, in commercial real estate, thinking they know the person who is their primary contact, and making certain comments because they know that that person is not gay or lesbian, or at least they think they know. But what they don't realize is there's someone in their family or their neighbor who owns a business and is looking to lease commercial space is gay. And you just made a comment that harms the relationship and also results in you not getting the referral. So I think you bring up a really good point, Cody. Ricky, do you want to add something about relationships, and especially maybe organizations, and using organizational relationships in order to tap in to this market?
Yeah, definitely. So it all goes back to relationships, just like Cody mentioned before. In the past 13, 14 years, I've worked with a lot of businesses and nonprofit organizations. And it's really important for owners and corporate managers not to only capitalize on a growing market that we have, but to really show empathy to a group of hardworking, marginalized individuals and families. Being in the LGBT community, we would reach out to different businesses to try to fundraise for different groups or organizations. And we would get turned down. Everything would go great, but we would get turned down as soon as they found out that we were in the LGBTQ community, or organization. Every state, every city, every county, every market, they all have different laws that affect everyone differently. And we just so happen to live in the most diverse city in the United States. And as business owners, as community leaders, we really have to make sure that our thoughts, our mission statements, and our community culture really reflects that, and really reflects the community that we serve. And it's all about relationships. There's an example of someone who they were trying to decide whether to use two different lenders, right? One was just they're both basically the same thing, but my client decided to go with one just because one of the lenders sent them a note and acknowledged their, same-sex relationship in their child. And for them, it was just, I see you, I hear you, I know you, I'm an ally, and that made them choose that person. And I think it's important, really building rapport and leading with heart in those conversations and giving back to the community. I mean, there's a lot, there's a lot of homeless youth that really need help. And, for those, if you're, a lender or a realtor and you may be an ally, reach out to those people, because once you start working with those people, it's all referral based. So that's a great way to tap in and give back. I'm a firm believer, you serve God by serving others. So,
So beautiful. So actually, that was a perfect segue. In my mind, you just took me to, wait a minute, you can't talk about relationships without talking about referrals. And you can't talk about referrals without talking about the reputation you have already built and the reputation you are building. And so all of this is connected. And for those of you who are attending, I'm seeing that you're posting some questions in the chat. And we're going to go for a few minutes longer, but I promise you we will then come back to the questions that you are putting in the chat, because so far they are amazing questions. So let's connect these dots: relationship, referrals, and reputation. So how you've already established it's important to build a reputation, but what are some ways to build a positive reputation? Somebody out there is asking, how would I even do that? So Cody, you want to jump in and get us started on this, and we'll spend the next maybe 10 minutes talking about how to build a positive reputation.
It's whether you're existing in this industry or if you're brand new to it, we've all been brand new at some point, and it's just a matter of building up to what you plan to achieve. My philosophy is with all my clients, and I tell them since day one, I am very straightforward. I will be, completely upfront with you on everything, and they appreciate that no matter what walk of life they are. As far as building a reputation, it's like I said, I've been doing this for many years, and I have grown in the community since right out of high school. So I'm very well known and I know a lot of people, but that does not mean it stops there. To build a reputation, you have to just constantly keep yourself out there in a positive manner. It's with everything that we do, it's within our industry, it's all about that one particular client, making them feel like they are your only client. They don't need to know that you're juggling 20 different, clients at one time and half of them have issues. They want to know that you're dealing with just them, which we would all want to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all consumers like everybody else, and we want to be treated the same way and kind of made feel special, to be able to be in that part. But you've got to be sincere about what you're doing. I'm a firm believer, and if you don't like your job, find something new. I absolutely love what I do, and there's plenty of people within the mortgage industry and the real estate industry that might think we're crazy for doing it, and sometimes we probably all think we're crazy for sticking in it, but we obviously do it for a reason, and we're still around for it. But as far as the building, you've got to remember, there's an old saying that I learned a long time ago in this business: you're only as good as your last deal. And no matter what that is, however you treat the people, that's what's going to be known. So when you're working with any of us on there, and everybody's going to say what a great experience they had, or they're going to say what they didn't. And I think it doesn't really matter what group of people you're working with. You just want to make sure that you're doing the best you can for everybody every time.
Yes, yes. Cindy, you look like you wanted to jump in on that.
Oh, I do. I do. 25 years ago, when I got into this business, I absolutely knew nothing of what I was doing. But I learned quickly that, your integrity is everything. You do what you say you're going to do. You go above and beyond. I've always lived my life on faith, family, and my business. And I can tell you, if I messed up on a transaction, I owned it, and I corrected it. You quickly learn what not to do in this business. But, when I managed an office of 100 agents, it was always treat them the way I wanted to be treated. Listen more, talk less, and help. And I think that is what's built my reputation, whether it was my agent or someone else's agent. I was always there to answer questions and help others. My clients going beyond. I had a client just recently, was an elderly couple, no children, put their home on the market. I cleaned their garage. I moved off all their furniture and donated it to a women's shelter as they ask. And, I think that, people will realize that who is sincere in this business and, sincere person, not only in business, but in everything you do. And that was the number one reason I chose my name, integrity, because that's who I am and that's what I stand for.
Fabulous, fabulous. Ricky?
Yeah, absolutely. So just being yourself, that's the common ground, right? So someone asked if they would seem to be ingenuous if they were cultivating the LGBTQ plus community, if they're not personally out. And the answer is no. The pride flag stands for so many people and it represents so many people. And there's different levels of LGBTQ community. You don't have to live yourself a certain way. You don't have to wave a flag all the time to be part of this community. You just have to be yourself. And when you lead from your heart, it's going to read off, you just reach out to those people. If that's the particular group that you want to work on, work with them, just like some people, I only deal with luxury, I only deal with this. You can do the same thing to help a great group of individuals. And no, be yourself, no matter what spectrum you're going to be on.
So I want to stay with this just a little longer around building a reputation of a realtor who is competent and who is confident and who has integrity and shows up authentically. How do I build that reputation with people who identify as LGBTQ? So especially if I'm not already a member of the community or of the family. What are things? I mean, if people are doing research before they select a realtor, where might they be looking for me? Where might I decide to get involved in the community? What might I do that would demonstrate on my website or in my marketing that I am someone who is not only open to, but I am committed to including LGBTQ customers, buyers and sellers and renters in the group of people I serve. I mean, what do I do? Do I put on my website in a big headline, serving the LGBTQ community? I mean, do I need to do that? What do I need to do? Give me some advice.
So there's a lot of great things you can do. I think Anita just posted on the chat, the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance is a great organization. Just social media. I know back in the day, we had a hard copy publication in Houston called Outsmart Magazine. That was a great publication. Cody was a staple there in that magazine. So, I mean, there's different ways to publicize. And on social media, all these hashtags and different groups and organizations, get involved, reach out. Go volunteer with Legacy Community Resources, or there's a lot of great organizations. And one thing with this community is that we all come together and we all help each other. So if you put your foot out there and say, what can I do for you? What can I do for your community? That's what's really going to put you out there. And then your reputation and your hard work ethic and your genuine heart is going to precede you,
And I would like to say too, and you know what Ricky said is absolutely right. Putting your hashtags, putting it in your bio, who you are, but also joining the communities and getting a community involvement, like the Chamber of Commerce. You can get involved with the Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. You can get involved in your churches. There are churches, but if you're not, an LGBTQ plus, you can be an alliance. And, like Ricky said, we're looking for sponsorships in everything that we do, the Pride Parade, the Montrose Counseling Center. My brother, unfortunately passed at the Omega House. I'm very involved with the Omega House. If you Google associations, it's going to come up, but joining the different websites and the communities, not only just in Houston, but the Realty Alliance Houston chapter that Anita's going to talk about in her video, you can join the community, build a profile, and get referral business, throughout the world.
And if you love playing recreational sports, contact me. I'm a part of a lot of the Gay Flag Football League, the Montrose Softball League, which has over 600 members. I've met some really great allies playing throughout the past, 15 years. And, you don't have to necessarily say, hey, I want to market to you. Just go be their friends, go do what you love, but find other people that, that do the same thing.
The reason,
Ricky, real quick, I'm still a staple in the Outsmart magazine.
Yes, you are. It's still there. My apologies.
Yes.
I usually do it online. That's why.
I asked the question because, we can say really nice things, right? Integrity, be a good model, but we need to make it real for people, right? Folks have logged into the session or watching the recording because they want some really practical examples. So when you say, learn about different organizations, join them. Some of the things you said, go volunteer with different groups in the community. Include in your bio information that either indicates you're part of the family or that you have worked with groups and that are a part of the LGBTQ community. I also heard you talk about joining sports teams and just being part of. So often when we are thinking about marketing to a group, an identity group that is not our own, we forget about those easy, practical things. You're doing exactly what you all mentioned earlier about building authentic relationships. So if you are someone who loves all the beautiful, really, Houston has a lot of amazing museums. And, museums are the symphony, and find people and find groups that are related to that and build relationships. If you are a book reader, like join a book club that is either predominantly LGBTQ or that's the theme of some of the books, and build a commonality there. It goes back to really being intentional in what you do and in who you do it with. And then that reinforces. So I just want to give you one more chance. Is there anything else that you want to add about how people build a reputation? How realtors build a reputation within the LGBTQ community? Was that your voice, Cody?
Yeah, I would like to point out something is that with not just within our community, but with anything, don't expect results overnight. It's with anything. It's you can't just walk in and be like, hey, I'm here, I like gay people, and we're gonna, everybody's gonna get your business. You've got to build it, with anything, with any type of community. You've got to build that trust. It could take months, it could take years. Prime example is I do a lot within the African American community and first time buyers, but it took a long time for them to, accept me. And the lady that works with me, she is Black and she is involved in it. And we're they see us as a team now. And it's not like, oh, who's this outsider, which is unfortunately what a lot of different, groups will do. And if you are just coming into, the gay community, it's might be good and everything in the beginning, and people are going to build up to you. They're going to have to build that trust factor like we do common sense in anything we do in life. So it's just, stay persistent and consistent with it, but be sincere all around, beginning to end, and it will work out.
Tracy, also, if you're like, I'm a cattle farmer part-time, moved out of the city, bought some rural property, bought some land, start blogging about being a, openly a gay lesbian, that has a cattle farm. And you'd be surprised if just blogging or creating Facebook groups, of interest that you have, that there are people that are scared to talk about it until it's created. And so creating those Instagram pages and those TikTok pages and those Facebook pages, there's just somebody waiting for your page out there. If you're an alliance and maybe you have a family member that, that is, in the community, create that page and talk about it. We have so many young families that are starting their families and talking about going through, the ability to start a family, being either two women or two men who are married or not married, but want to start that family. And if you've gone through that, create a page, because there's other people out there just waiting for your page.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Everyone said some really great, amazing things. One thing I just want to add is, if you see something, say something. We live in a world very divided, and as real estate professionals, sometimes we're in situations where a client may say something that just isn't kosher. They may say, "Oh no, I don't want to live in that neighborhood because that's where the gays live." As a professional, we have to put our foot down. It's like, "Sir, that's not the right thing to do," or "I'm going to choose not to work with you," and we have to really fight that division and that stigma. So just by doing that, the laws of attraction, you put that positive energy out there, it's going to come back to you. Sure.
Great. So that's a perfect segue into the conversation that I think is really important for us to include. And that is a conversation about fair housing. It is a conversation about professional standards and ethics, and how all of that applies to the LGBTQ identity group as well. And so, Ricky, just that whole comment right there, right? 100% right there. If you see something, say something. Recently, the question came up in another setting where someone actually asked the question, does fair housing law apply to the LGBTQ community? And I was a little surprised to hear the question, but if you were asked that question, any of you as panelists, if you were asked that question, how would you respond?
So fair housing, it means just that. Fair housing for everyone, no matter who they are, what they look like, their sexual orientation, everything. So I would say yes. Like, we can't discriminate. We just have to be empathetic with people. I'll give you an example. I was at a pool, and this has nothing to do with real estate, but just an example. I was at a pool, and there was a trans woman there. She introduced herself to a woman and said her name. And later, that the woman that was introduced to, she came back to me and she was like, "Is she a he or a her?" And my response was just, "Well, how did she introduce herself to you? That's the way you need to refer her to yourself." And it's just those little situations that we're going to find on a day-to-day basis that are really going to help, especially with fair housing. It doesn't matter. Like, there's some instances where a seller may be okay with everything and an ally, but the buyers aren't. So it's just, you really have to be able to guide people and guide them to make the right choices and the right decision. And it's difficult, but we have to do it together as a community.
Absolutely, Ricky. When I moved to small town Hempstead, I think they have like 5,000 people. I went to the local hairdresser and to get a haircut. And she was talking, what does your husband do? And I said, my wife works for Dow Chemical. And she looked at me and she said, oh. And I think it's about education, because the next word out of her mouth was, well, who's the man and who's the woman? And I said, we're both women. And she said, oh. And, as we began to talk, I really do believe that it broadened her mind. And she said, the next time I went to get my haircut, she said, I'm so sorry. I was totally out of line. I should have never said something like that. Nobody would have ever said something like that to me. And she said, I hope I did not offend you. And I said, you didn't. I hope I educated you. And, I still get my haircut there. And, and that's just the way I approach it is that it's all about educating them, because so many people are brought up a certain way. And, and once they're educated, I think that, they choose whether they want to be involved with me or not.
Definitely agree with that. There's a lot of people just need to be educated at times, or they see what they see on TV or hear on the news, or just, what they've heard through friends and family growing up throughout their lives, opposed to what people are. If people would just have enough common sense to realize, if you're a contributing member of society, it doesn't matter who's in your bed, what color you are, anything else. It's all about how a person is, bottom line. And a lot of people need to realize that, plain and simple.
So one of the things that is most likely true is that anyone who signed up for this webinar is, already quote unquote on board and already interested in knowing what they can and cannot do, or how they can deal with some sticky situations. So I think those real life examples are helpful to help people understand, wow, people do say things often because they don't know better, or they don't know what to say and what not to say. Last year, when NAR updated the professional standards and the code of ethics, there were many questions about a lot of what was included in those upgrades. When I read them, I was like, well, wait a minute, this is not like a wholesale change. There was already a really strong statement about non-discrimination and about being respectful and all of that. That already existed. There was just an enhancement to it. But it always has included, or not always in all time, but the previous standards already included important information about prohibiting discrimination or discriminatory remarks with people based on sexual orientation. Is there anything that has come up for you or in your experience in the last 6 months where people have questioned the new standards related to the LGBTQ community or family?
Don't necessarily have an example, but as we maneuver and as we grow as a community and an organization that we're in, that everything's always going to be questioned. But if there's every problem has a solution, right? So it really takes people to step up, come together, put their thinking caps on, and really do something about it. Just us having this discussion, this webinar, is a great start or a great addition to what HAR has already been doing in the past. The fact that Cindy, you were the very first open chairman for HAR speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. I think I may be the first or the second openly gay chairman for the YPN network group. So it takes really, you have to put yourself out there and you have to fight for what's right. And it's never going to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect right away, but we have to make our voice known. And, there's a lot of corporations out there that they get on the pride bandwagon. Yeah, it's a great start, but let's really educate them. Let's get with those people. Let's get with our clients that have those positions with those companies to really have them truly understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. And it's going to take everybody. There's not a one right answer for it.
Absolutely, Ricky. You were talking about, you have to be true to yourself and stand up. And, 25 years ago, it was extremely hard, to do that. When I came out, I came out because my partner was very important to me, but my children were also very important to me. And, having a 17-year-old who did not understand, it was, I'm going to live my life and be who I am. And basically, you can get on board, but I'm still going to love you if you don't. It's the persona of just being who you are and helping someone understand and having a lot of patience. There's some people you cannot fix stupid, and I hate to say that, but you just cannot fix it. And that's okay too. That's okay. That's the way they believe. But being yourself and and not regretting 1 minute of who you are from the time you were being born. And just treating the people that you want to, the way you want to be treated is just the number one thing that I think you can do for yourself is don't be scared.
Okay, I'm going to make this real, like really, really real. So, scenario, and I'm going to invite you. What would you say, or what could a real estate agent or a realtor say? So I have a potential client. I'm talking to them about they're wanting to sell their property. And in the conversation, we have built up some rapport, and they've even said, yeah, of the realtors I've talked to, I know I'm going to really like working with you. And in the conversation, they are responding to my question about what's really important to you as we work together to sell this property. And they say, well, I really love this neighborhood, and even though I'm leaving it, I just want to make sure my home doesn't go to someone who's gay or transgender. How are you going to handle that?
I would say thank you for this opportunity, but I don't discriminate. And if you feel that you don't want your home to go to someone, that is, LGBTQ plus, then I respect that. But I also respect the fact that that goes against everything that my ethics that I believe in. So I wish you the very best. And I would end the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that. But as a realtor, the main question to ask is what's more important to you as a realtor?
Yeah.
Your transaction or your integrity and your ethics? And then you decide how you're going to respond to that.
I'm not a realtor, but I have a mouth, so y'all wouldn't want to know what I would say.
Tracy, I do have to tell you, I did have a client and someone else listed that home and they called me back and they asked me to sell their home. It was just a matter of standing up for what you believe. And I think that overpowered in what their bias was. And I did sell the home.
Yeah, it's a really tough question, isn't it? Because when on the one hand, are you willing to turn away business? And on the other hand, how important is your integrity and following the standards of the profession, right? No one is required to be a realtor, but when you agree to be a realtor and when you pay your membership, there are professional standards that go with that title. And being and operating within those standards and within that level of integrity it's a serious question to ask. Am I willing to turn away potential business? And I personally believe that, yes, when you do that, you are building a reputation and a pattern that will turn into more business, the right kind of business down the line. But I know that's a very real question, as I've talked to several realtors who have been like, I just don't know what I would do, or I don't know, I'd like to think I would turn the business away. And I would, as Ricky said, I would like speak up and not just make up some mealy mouth excuse of, well, you know, blah, 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 whatever you make up, and be upfront about that is unethical. That is not a part of how we do business or how I personally do business. So if anybody is watching who has that question, I think that you've got to practice in advance how you would respond to that. So let's look at some of the questions that people have asked. We've woven a couple of responses in, but let's look at anything else we want to add. So one of the early questions was, what are some of your suggestions to get the LGBTQ plus community comfortable with working with someone who is not a family member and trust them? So we've had a few comments related to that, but anything else that any of you want to add?
I would just like to say that it's not really, don't force it, don't try to make it, because I know clearly a lot of gay people, but I know within our community too, a lot of gay people do not want to work with the other gay people just because it is a small community, where there are some that will only do it and some that won't, just because of the fact that it's such a small community. They don't want somebody else knowing all of their business. So they might feel better with somebody that is an ally opposed to somebody that they might run into on a regular basis. It's not always just a matter of having to stick with who is part of your inner group, if you will, or social. It's just a matter of who you can trust all around.
Yes, so I love the way that you express that, because it really is a both and. So no community or no identity group is monolithic. So everyone who is Black doesn't necessarily want to work only with people or realtors who are Black. Everyone who has a disability, only wants to work with, right? So we do have to, we have to remember it's a both and. If I am, no matter what my identity group is, if I am committed, not just interested, but committed to building authentic relationships, then how would I build an authentic relationship in my own community of people, my own identity group? Now, how do I apply those same choices, those same decisions, that same strategy with the LGBTQ plus community? So I think there's no magic recipe. I want to add that there's no magic recipe for do these 4 things, and guess what? In 3 years, you will have more business from the LGBTQ plus community than you ever imagined. It is integrating strategy and authenticity with good business practices. Another question, will I be seen as disingenuous if I cultivate LGBTQ clients, if I genuinely want to serve them, but I'm not out in my personal life? So there's a couple of layers there, and it's very similar to the previous question in that, if we just go back to authenticity and relationships, et cetera, it's going to be similar. But there's a nuance here. One, will I be seen as disingenuous if I go after this group or build relationships with this group and I'm not viewed as a member of this group? And that could be because I do not share the identity or I do share the identity, but I'm not out. So any reactions from any of the panelists, anything you want to add that we haven't already heard?
I believe so. I believe that, if you don't want to be out, you don't want to be out, treat them as you want to be treated, and if you feel that you're comfortable enough to say something, say it. If you don't, then, do what you do best, be genuine, be honest, and do a good job for them. It doesn't matter about whether you're out or not. It just matters about whether you do the best job for them.
Yes. So I was asked this question recently, and I'm curious what you as panelists would say in response. Someone said to me, sexual orientation and gender identity are not always so obvious, right? They're not always visible in ways that would make me guess or assume or think. So they asked if I could share some examples of things they should be careful about saying or doing that might create a problem with someone they were working with or are trying to develop a relationship with, a business relationship with, who identifies as LGBTQ. Examples of things they might want to be careful about doing or saying.
Specifically with gender identity, just, hi, my name is Ricky, what's your name? And go by what they introduce themselves as. It's very simple, and don't stay away from using the words he or she or they or them or anything like that, and just have an open belly-to-belly conversation with them. If they choose to disclose something personal to them, then they can, but just, it's not that you have to walk on eggshells all the time, but just be kind, be kind. Super simple.
Kind is a very short word, and a word that seems really simple. Be kind, show respect, and it can get a little tricky sometimes. I think we all know that. Anything else that comes to mind? What would you tell people? We had the example just a few minutes ago about, assuming that someone of one gender is married to someone of a different gender or gender identity. And so obviously that would be one thing to be careful or notice when you're assuming that in the use of the word wife or husband. Is it your assumption, or are you responding to what the person has told you?
All right. Tracy, I learned a long time ago that you asked the clients, how would you like to be communicated with? Would you like me to call you by your first name or your last name? Or is there a nickname that you would like me to, to address you with? I feel it's the same. How would you like me to respond to your questions by email or text or telephone? What's the best time of day to communicate? It's the simple things that sometimes we overthink, but I do think that you have to be cognizant about, well, who's the husband, who's the wife? You can't ask questions like that. Or who's the decision maker? You can't ask those questions. You want to think about how you want to be addressed. It's how you can communicate with your clients. And I think just making them feel at ease and know that they're in the best hands with your professionalism, that you're going to take care of them and respect them. I think that's so important.
This conversation is really critical because when we use the golden rule of treating people the way that we would like to be treated, it can get a little tricky because different cultural groups have different actual norms. So we might all agree we want to be respectful, or we want to be kind, or we want to be professional. But the specific behaviors and the specific language that we use can trigger a different response if we're not careful. And so we still have to listen, and we still have to do a lot of education, because people don't know what phrases might be negative trigger phrases, or what approach might be seen as a microaggression because that person has had that question asked or that assumption made over and over and over and over again. So someone who is outside of this identity group really doesn't know, unless they have a close family member or a very close friend or a neighbor who they've gotten to know. And that does not represent probably the majority of our realtors. So great. Was Cody, it looked like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things is that listening is key. You know, it doesn't matter which aspect. I mean, like for myself, I get, you know, people, if they meet me or know of me through somebody else and they know I have kids, if they say, oh, you know, you and your wife or something, and I just say, no, no wife, you know, because if I don't know you, it's not your business, really. But when they start going and, you know, if I say no wife, and then they're like, oh, okay, pick up on little things that are being said. But of course, human nature is they still want more questions and still want to try to do it. So then, you know, it gets to like, okay, you know, my partner, oh, okay. And then it's funny on my side as the opposite end up, because I see their wheels turning and trying to figure it out. And they're like, well, there's a ring on your hand or something. It's like, again, you know, it's like just either come out, it's just the way that they do things sometimes. But listening is key. The flip side is, unlike realtors, I don't meet the majority of my clients because everything on my end with financing is done phone, fax, and email. You know, everything's online. So I do find myself in the same situation that a lot of the realtors trying to get into the community might be facing many times. You know, it's when they, you know, when I'm talking to a client and they're wanting to apply for a mortgage, I have to beat around the bush, if you will, to try to find out the answers needed. It's like, okay, is there going to be a co-borrower? Yes. Okay. Are y'all married? Because that is one of the questions, you know, on how we do an application. No, not married. Okay. Who is it? And of course, without fail, it's always the ones that don't want to give the information that they give the name, and it could be either direction. You know, it could be a male or a female. And so you just kind of program them like, okay, well, what do they do? You know, it's until you get where it is, because you can't just flat out ask somebody, you know, certain questions. But you've got to have the common sense of being respectful to find out what you're needing to know, with them being able to be comfortable of letting you know as well. Not just, you know, gay or straight or anything else, just anybody in general. Listening is key.
Listening absolutely is key, and you give some great examples, because on the mortgage side, on the title, in the title part of the process, and the mortgage and lending part of the process, there are certain things that you're looking at paperwork, and you know, you're not necessarily, you are building a relationship. You want them to see you as professional. You want to get the referrals. But I agree with you. If you start off by listening and then taking the conversation one step at a time, not jumping from 0 to 100 with
Right.
one question, then you're also incrementally building trust and respect until you get the information that you need, in this case, for the paperwork, but also in your language, you know, which pronouns you use, or how can you be generic in the pronouns, and how you ask that follow-up question. Will your wife be joining you? Right? Why are you assuming I have a wife? Right? So that's on all of us as professionals to really pay attention to what we think is the natural next question. Is it biased, unconsciously, unintentionally, but is it biased to represent that if you are normal, then you must be heterosexual, married to someone of a different gender or sex, right? It's all of that stuff we have to look at for ourselves. Yeah, I want to jump into one more question. I'm monitoring the time, but before I do that, is there another comment related to this specific topic? Because I'm going to take us a little bit in a different direction. Great. Great. So, there's been a pattern that has been well documented and reported on as it relates to appraisals and the negative impact on appraisals based on race, where people of African descent, especially, and then to a smaller degree, people of other ethnic groups having their appraisals be negatively impacted by photos or artwork or books that are on the coffee table and images in the home they are trying to sell. Has that pattern also shown up in a negative way for homeowners who are LGBTQ? And if so, what do we do about it?
25 years ago, yes. 25 years ago, it was hard. It was hard, to let somebody know. And today's world, times have changed, more education, not so much. Are there still appraisals that come in low because it's a gay person selling their home? I don't say that I have ever experienced that, but any appraisal that comes in low, I'm going to do my due diligence and provide my comps and fight it. But no, I think Cody would probably be the best one to answer this question for us.
So personally, I kind of feel like on our end, we're happy if appraisals come in at value and if they come in anywhere near on time because the market is so crazy. As far as I'm licensed in 4 different states, and I see appraisals from all over, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm at a desk 12 plus hours a day every day. So my only entertainment is kind of looking through the pictures of a listing that somebody wants to put an offer in on, or the appraisals and everything else. I will say that I don't really see too many pictures of anything in there of families. And we've had this discussion before that I don't know that appraisers are going to look specifically at, which homes are being, sold by what type of people. But as far as the person coming in, I feel like as a consumer, I would not want to see anybody else's family in there, because if you're trying to sell your house, you want to see in your mind your family being in that home. And so there's some people in any walk that their aspect is like, well, it's my house, I'm still living here, I want all my stuff up. And then there's others like, I just want to sell. So I think it's kind of really on the realtor side, you have to go with what the borrower or the seller wants, but also let them know, like, hey, remind them, you're not hiding yourself of who you are or your family is. You're here to sell a house, and you want the other people to see their own in there, not you. And that's just kind of my personal way of thinking as well, because when I bought my first house, when I sold it, that's what I was told. They're like, take all the pictures down. I'm like, well, why? And I thought same thing. We're like, well, is it because it's same-sex couple or what? And they're like, no, you don't want them to see your family. You want the buyers to envision their family in this house. And I was like, that makes sense. And it stuck with me.
Great. So we have a comment in the chat that is I'll just read it. HAR, and for that matter, TAR and NAR, don't really care about LGBTQ plus people. This sudden wave of concern is just clever marketing and PR spin. And there is a related comment similar, referring to HUD and fair housing protection. So we've got about 3 minutes. You want to jump in with how you see it from your perspective and your involvement in the industry.
Absolutely disagree with those comments. I've been on the board since probably 2008, 2009. I absolutely believe that HAR has done a lot for our community and continues to do. It's not just for publicity. I don't know if a lot of you know that HAR has a lot of family on staff, and they treat them just like they treat everybody, with love and respect. Our programs, we're starting to get some programs through National Association of Realtors. Rita's very good about providing providing those classes, along with Matt and his communication. So I'd have to disagree. I will tell you, when I ran for the board of directors, I did go to Bob Hill and tell him, and he said, "Good for you, buddy." And he didn't treat me any different, nor did the staff. So I'm sorry you feel that way or think that way, but I absolutely have to disagree.
I'd like to echo the same thing. So going back to the see something, say something. So let's talk about something suddenly changing. So since July 4th, 1976 or 1776 to July 26, 2015, it was illegal for same-sex gay marriage. It didn't just suddenly change June 26, 2015. It was a long fought. It was a long journey. And that's exactly what we're doing. So just because we didn't have it right in the past doesn't mean it's just suddenly going to change. There's a lot of sweat and tears going into the changes that are coming that are still going to come. So no, it wasn't suddenly. Like we have to work with NARTR. It takes people to speak up and do something about it. And that's really what's going to continue to change. Nothing is sudden. This is all years in the making. So I agree with that statement as well. So, and it's going to continue to change, and we're going to fight. We're still going to do what we need to do. We're going to get the right legislators out there to make sure the right presidents and the right representatives to represent us accordingly. So if you feel that way, I'm sorry, but I promise you, we will work hard to continue to make sure that we
call us. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear.
So I would add that, when you look at a continuum of change and respect and inclusion, that there are going to be people at all places of the continuum. So I can only notice that the pattern is everyone can only see the world from their own perspective. So the world is always changing. Always changing. And in the professional world, there are patterns and trends that happen over time. So very little is ever done just from a marketing and PR spin, but there will be things that change and seem to pop out of nowhere. So I love what you just said, Ricky, about what we see today is the result of many years of discussions and comments and conversations and education. So nothing happens just like that. And it does require everyone to get involved. So I don't know where the time has gone. I love that we had time to address or to respond to some questions and provide some answers, but I want to give you each 1 minute for any closing comment or one thing you want people to take away. So let's go in reverse alphabetical order by first name, and that would be Ricky, then Cody, then Cindy.
The one thing that I would say, just in general, from growing up in a small town, from being gay, from being Hispanic, from having a pretty difficult life at a very early age, never live your life through someone else's eyes. Just remember that. Just because someone else says something about you or says you should be some way or do something or you don't deserve this, take that out. Live your life through your eyes and fight for what's right and do what's right. And that's the only thing that I can say, especially with this type of topic and with, just the diversity in the world we live in. It's going to be a journey. It's not we just got to keep going, So that's all I'm going to say.
As far as my part, I kind of agree with that. It's just, treat people the way you want to be treated. It doesn't matter, what anything is about anybody. If they're a human being and they're there to get your services, that's what you're there for, is treat them with respect, no matter what their sexual orientation, their color, their age, anything. Just have respect for that person like you would want for yourself. And on a side note is, no matter what kind of person that is, you only need one lender, and that's me. So
Very good, very good.
I got that.
I like that. I have to say that, don't be fearful. We are a big community. We're a huge voice. Be yourself. When the time is right for you to come out, you will come out. Always be true to yourself. Live your best life, because we only have one, and always do the right thing. If it means including turning a customer or client away based on not agreeing with, with your sexual orientation or for any reason, just know that it's not about the money, it's about helping others. And if you live your life that way, I think you're going to have a pretty awesome career.
Beautiful. So my closing comments would be 3 things to remember. If you want to tap into the LGBTQ market, then you've got to remember that no market, no identity group is monolithic. There's not just one way to be or one thing to know or 10 tips that if you memorize them. And so that means that number 2, it's really important to give yourself a learner's permit, that you are constantly learning more about the best ways to connect with, build relationships with people who are in this group, in this whatever identity group you are targeting, in this case, the LGBTQ plus market. And then 3rd, set your standards high. As a realtor, there are professional standards that are really designed to help you build a collective relationship of professionalism and expertise. And you want to set your standards high and then live up to those. And if you do those 3 things, I think you'll be really successful. We've talked several times about being involved or learning about how to get involved with different organizations. And I would love it if you would just take a minute and a half and watch this video from Anita Blue and the Alliance.
Hello, my name is Anita Blue, and I am the LGBTQ+ Real Estate Alliance Houston Chapter President. Our vision is to create a world free of housing discrimination. Our mission is to advocate, celebrate, and elevate. Advocate for fair housing for all and promote LGBTQ+ home ownership. Elevate professionalism in the industry through education and networking. Celebrate diversity and inclusion in our members and allied partners. Our values include community, collaboration, equality and equity, inclusion, transparency, and pride. The fact is, the law allows discrimination against LGBTQ+ people in 27 states. This is the single fact why our mission and services of LGBTQ+ real estate practitioners is so vital to our community. Let's work together to allow all people to have the home ownership dream become a reality. Member benefits include get referrals, network with members locally and nationally, access to member-only national Facebook group and chats, listing in public consumer and referral directories, member discounts, travel, business services, and client services, access to local chapter events, use of Alliance marketing materials, ability to be involved with our nonprofit organization. To learn more about our organization, upcoming events, and to become a member, please visit realestatealliance.org.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks again to Tracy and Cindy and Cody and Ricky, and most of all for each of you for taking the time to be more educated. not just for yourself, but for your clients and potential clients. We appreciate your time. And that is all for today, but I do hope that you'll check out several other webinars that we have coming up throughout the year. On September 1st, our program will be centered around serving the special needs and people with disabilities community. We're also going to be doing some education that does talk about working specifically with clients who need modifications to homes. So looking at developing that for both property managers and realtors. So please visit the har.com webinars page, which is just har.com/webinars to sign up like you did for this one. Have a great rest of the week, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much.